Thanks, Bud. My name's Ed, and I'm an alcoholic, and don't want to belabor the point anymore. I think we will open the meeting, and I'd like to present a person I've had a brief moment to meet with, and but I've listened to his tapes, and he has a very powerful message. The words are powerful, but I think the pauses in between the words also relate a lot of feeling and a description of this terrible disease of alcoholism and what it's done to him, and how he's come back from that. And without any further ado, I'd like you to welcome Keith Drum from California.
Hello, everybody. I'm an alcoholic. My name's Keith. Most important thing that I can share with you, it hasn't been necessary for me to take a drink or do any dope since May the 11th, 1976, and for that I'm especially grateful. I'm glad to be here and glad to be sober. It's good to be involved in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's always a privilege to be invited to share with my family, and it's a privilege to be able to share the recovery that's been given to me so freely, and it's a form of service to be able to ask to come and share it back. And service is gratitude in action. And the people who put these things on, and the speakers who come and share, and the people from New York, I've been privileged to be on the program with them and know them personally. And it's just a real privilege to be able to be a part of my own recovery and to be a part of life. And you know, the most important thing that I've come to understand is that Alcoholics Anonymous in this way of life is not about turning it off. It's about turning it on. It's about living. It's not about dying. And you have choices, and you have choices that you can make, and you can learn from the things that are presented to you, given to you, the people and examples around you. You can benefit from the things, or you can, you know, as many people do, reject it and go on with the way of life that involves insanity and death. And for every year that I've been sober, over 18 years, there's been somebody that I've known very well, more than the gentleman that introduced me. I've spent time with them, and they chose to not take this program. They chose by their own choice to do it their own way, and they've gone out and died, either behind alcohol or narcotics, to prove that what I'm doing and what I share with you is right. And I share that not as a morbid reflection. I share that simply because of one very simple reason. I don't want their death to be in vain. This is a fatal disease. In order for it to be a fatal disease, people have to die. So today, this afternoon, we're gathered here because we're among the living. We're among the living. We're among the fortunate. We're among the winners. The winners are very simply the people who are willing to do the things that the losers are not willing to do. And these things, these conventions, these gatherings here are the icing on the cake. It's what we do to get together to create some enthusiasm, and enthusiasm is God within. We get together for that so that we can put some enthusiasm behind our recovery and behind our way of life. And I know when I was new and relatively new around the program, I couldn't understand a lot of these things. There's just a lot of words I heard, a lot of well-meaning things. And I heard a story of a family. Family lived in Europe. And all their life, years of their life, they wanted to come to America. They didn't have much money, so they saved and saved and saved. And came a time when they could afford to buy a ticket. A mother and a father and a little boy, and they could buy a ticket on a great ocean liner to come to America. And they planned and they put all their goodies together and got their little food together and all the money they had except a little bit of change while they bought this ticket. And come the day they got on the great ocean liner and took off, and they were excited, and they got down in their room, and days in and days out they stayed in that room, and they ate what they brought. They had crackers and cheese mostly, and days in and day out, that's all they ate was crackers and cheese. And all they could think about was when the voyage was over, they were going to be here. The dream would have been fulfilled. Oh, and the father loved the mother and his son, and the mother loved the father and her son. There was not without love. There was not without giving. There was not without hope. And near the end, the little boy got tired of crackers and cheese. And he went to his father and he said, Daddy, hey, I got to have something else. I got to have something. I just can't handle this crackers and cheese anymore. And the father, being a good father, reached in his pocket and took out a nickel. He said, Here, son, here's a nickel. Go up in the galley and get an ice cream cone. We're almost there. Go get an ice cream cone. The little boy took off and he was gone like 2 hours. The father had no idea. He was worried. And pretty soon the little boy came back and he was lit up like a Roman candle. Man, he had a smile on his face. He was lit up, and the father said, "Where you been? I've been worried about you." So I went up in the galley and I had a steak and I had 2 ice cream cones. And the father said, "You mean you can get a steak and 2 ice cream cones on a nickel?" And the little boy said, "Oh no, the food comes with the ticket." The food comes with a ticket, baby. Now let me tell you, that's a story about teachers. That's a story about teachers, because the father loved the son. He loved him and he didn't want to deprive him of anything. Certainly not. So be careful in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon and Al-Team. Be careful of the teachers that are ignorant. Because this is not about ignorance. This is about learning. I don't want to eat crackers and cheese, man. I come here, man, on crackers and cheese. I didn't come here to shortchange myself. I want the whole deal. I want it all. I don't want crackers and cheese. I want the steak, man. I want the ice cream. I want the whole enchilada. I come here looking for that. And if you're sitting in this room, I hope you did too. Because it comes with the ticket. It comes with what you had to go through to get here. And I got a story. I got a story of a family story. Family story. I come from a family of drunks, and I found a family of insanity and took the insanity of the disease right on into a way of life. And because of this program and because of a loving God that I've come to know in my life, I've found the freedom that I look for in every drink, every pill, every fix I ever took. Right here in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've never needed anything but Alcoholics Anonymous, never looked at anything at Alcoholics Anonymous. Of course, I can say that because prior to coming to Alcoholics Anonymous, I've been psychoanalyzed, analyzed, treated, locked up, incarcerated, looked at, punched, and tickled, and baptized, and dipped. So by the time I got here, I wasn't looking for no other treatment. I'd been sprinkled and done over, I'll guarantee you. And it didn't take. So when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous and got in the deal here, why then my life has changed. It changed beyond my wildest drunken dreams. Beyond my wildest drunken dreams. I live a life today that's beyond my wildest drunken dreams. I live with that lady. We've been together 35 years. And I hear all kinds of people in my meetings bitching about the painful divorces they go through. But I'm going to tell you, it ain't easy to live with somebody for 35 years either. You got a few sacrifices on that end of the deal. I got a daughter, a beautiful young daughter. We were, what a fantastic miracle story, but by the same token, she's so involved, her whole life centers around the program of Al-Anon. And therefore, she is a beautiful story, because her whole life centers around this. My wife goes to 4 or 5 Al-Anon meetings to get along with me. I go to 4 or 5, 6 Alcoholics Anonymous meetings a week to get along with me. And my kid goes to 4 or 5 Al-Anon meetings a week to get along with whoever she's with. And that isn't too big of a sacrifice, really, considering the fact that we live a good life. And I could not even imagine that. Couldn't even imagine that. And it's beyond anything I ever imagined. Matter of fact, if you'd have told me the way it was going to be when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, anybody would have set me down and told me exactly the way my life's going to be, I wouldn't have believed them. And I'm grateful that it's been revealed to me little by little, piece by piece, that the miracles of this program have come in my life and the surrenders along with it. I don't know if I was born an alcoholic or not, but when I took my first drink, an alcoholic was born. I come from a long line of alcoholics, and I don't think that's necessarily a big deal. I have no, nothing against them. Matter of fact, I'll tell you, if you grow up in selfish, self-centered, self-seeking, neurotic, insane people, that's going to be the very thing that's going to allow you to stay in AA. Because when you get to AA, you're going to sit down in a room full of selfish, self-centered, self-seeking, neurotic, insane people, and we're going to say you're home. So the very things that I grew up in that family, the things that I learned to survive in that family of alcoholism, has been the very things that allowed me to survive here in Alcoholics Anonymous. My father's an alcoholic, his father was an alcoholic, his father was an alcoholic. I didn't want to check any farther than that, but it runs on. My father's a lawyer. I've never resented the fact that he was a lawyer. I needed a lawyer most of my life. Kept him on retainer until he got so drunk he couldn't show up for my court cases. And the amazing thing about it is I got 14 months of seniority on him. I sobered up 14 months before he did, and I don't ever let him forget it. Always wanted to one-up the old man. But we got a good relationship today. We got a good relationship. He lives out in the Texas-Oklahoma Panhandle, and I live in California, and we get together and do things together, and we've made our amends, and our family is together. And I grew up in the Texas-Oklahoma Panhandle where the men were men and the sheep ran scared, and I grew up with good old boys, redneck tough, drink that 3-2 beer. The Baptists bought all the liquor license, so you couldn't have no whiskey, so the bootleggers made $1 million. I grew up in there drinking that White Lightning, moonshine, and, taking a lot of Benzedrine. I took a lot of Benzedrine. I don't identify with anybody that's specialized. If you're a specialist, that's fine. I'm a pig myself. I'd take anything, anytime, anywhere, stick it up. The only thing I've never had is a pap smear. I don't have much to look forward to if I go back. Sex change, maybe. I had an uncle who was a doctor, and I was a hyperactive child, so they gave me amphetamines. It's amazing. One of the drugs of the young people today is Ritalin. I did that a long time ago, and that was their answer. Give me that amphetamine they thought it'd slow you down. All it did is just speed you up so it looked like you're in neutral. See? It's like going 190 miles an hour with your feet nailed to the floor is what it's like. Gave you a real depth perception, I'll guarantee you. I didn't have any problem with perception. You do enough speed, you'll get some perception. You can see clear into next week. And I started drinking at a very early age, and my disease manifested itself, and that was all right because I was around people that was the way it was. By the time I was 12 years old, they had me locked up because they needed to study my behavior pattern. They locked me up with people just like me, and I learned some other things, and I spent most of the early years of my life, instead of going to high school, I was locked up in some kind of a boys' reformatory or, some kind of a problem children group. They grouped us problem children together. We were comfortable together, but during that period of time I accelerated in sports. I was involved in sports. I look back through a lot of inventory in my life today, and I knew that I look back, fear's been my partner all my life. Fear's an amazing emotion because to some people fear demobilizes you. It will demobilize you, you hunker down like an old mule. To other people, fear is a mobilizer. It's an accelerator. It's something that's like an adrenaline rush. And to me, fear was an accelerator. I drove through fear like a fast car, and it just worked in my life that way. My drug of choice is sobriety, is adrenaline. I mean, it's just there, and that's the way I was. And fear was a mobilizer for me. And I was a scared little boy that grew up to be a scared little boy. That's all. I come up out of that environment. I just used fear to move me from one place to the next. And I accelerated in sports, and particularly contact sports, because that fear was a mobilizer, and it accelerated me through those kinds of walls of fear. I've come to understand that every good thing in my life is preceded by a wall of fear. So every good thing that I had to do, every goal that I ever set, I had to go through that wall of fear to get on the other side. And I used things and took things in order to go through those walls of fear. Now, you live like that. Well, it helps if you're a little bit of an egomaniac. And I had a lot of trouble when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. Listened to a lot of alcoholics. I felt inferior, and I felt, different, and I was on the wall, and I couldn't dance, and somebody come along, gave me a drink, and I'd go out and dance. Not me. I brought the band, man. I brought the band. I brought the party. I brought the deal, man. I've always loved the deal. Give me the deal. I don't care if it's 50 cents, 50 million. Deal me in. I like the deal. I didn't have no problem with inferior feelings, Either lead or follow or get the hell out of the way. Of course, I was loaded most of the time. See? And alcohol did for me exactly what it's supposed to do. It allowed me to function without a conscience. Because it says in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, the reason men and women drink is so that we cannot distinguish the difference between true and false, right and wrong. That's also the definition of a sociopath. And for many years, I'd much rather been a sociopath than I would an alcoholic. I'll guarantee you. Had a little ring to it. So I was diagnosed as a sociopath way before I was ever diagnosed as an alcoholic. And by the time I was 18, 19 years old, I'd been in and out of trouble. People had been setting me down, discussing various behavior patterns and talking to me about why. I couldn't believe it. Can you imagine somebody sitting in front of an alcoholic and say, "Why'd you do that?" I don't know why I did it. If I had to wonder why I did it, I wouldn't have done it. It'd take too long to figure it out, and then it'd be over. I'd have to think of something else to do, so I'd have to figure out why. Why do I do it? It don't make no difference why, because whenever I do this, I'm going to do something else, then it don't make any difference. So I don't need to know why. If I don't need to know why do you need to know why? You know? And they want to talk to me about that. And I didn't care, and I didn't know. And consequently, I got in a lot of trouble, and people were doing that. The Baptists, I grew up down there in the Baptist belt. The Baptists, they dip me and sprinkle me. I'm a buzzard Baptist. It's the only time I ever went to church is there's something to eat or something dead. In other words, a funeral. But they ripped me and tore me. They said, you know, you shouldn't do that, and I'd already thought it and done it. They said, if you think that, you're going to hell, so I volunteered. Somebody's got to volunteer, and I volunteered. And consequently, I just gave up to that whole deal. I surrendered that whole idea. My grandma had taught me, said, you know, it doesn't take any more effort to marry a rich girl than it does a poor girl. And I always remember what my grandma said, so that guy wants to talk to you there. I married a rich girl. My first wife was, her father's one of the 10 richest men in the state of Texas. And so I married her. And after a short period of time, her father called me in and he said, I've got a lot of money. And I said, I noticed that. He said, I didn't get it because I make bad investments. And you're a bad investment. And so they divorced me. And I thought I loved her till she was gone, and then I recognized I missed the money. So I said I'd never ever marry a rich girl again, you know how we are. And so I said, I'm going to marry a poor one. I'm going to get me a poor one. And so in my search to find a poor woman, well, I got detained down there in Texas for a period of 18 months, studying my behavior patterns and checking me out. And when they let me out of there, why, I went home, because that's what alcoholics always do. We go home. I mean, what's home for? I went back home, and when I got to town, why, there was a dance going on, and I decided to go to the dance and let everybody know I was there. And back in town, the heat's on, and I'm ready. And I went to this little country dance, and it got boring, and I don't like boring, so I started to fight. In the middle of the fight, it got out of hand, so I split. May be sick, but I ain't crazy. And I took off for the woman's restroom. As I went into the woman's restroom, there was a woman standing by the door. I said, let me know when the fight's over, and I ran in the woman's restroom and hid. Pretty soon she come in there and said, you can come out now, cowboy. And I went out, and the band was playing again, and she was handy, so I asked her to dance. And I'm a quick study, one quick dance. I found out she had a job, a car, a place to stay, a driver's license. I fell in love. I found out later she finished the fight that I started, too. I don't think we fell in love with each other. We fell in sick with each other. That's where the rocks in my head fit the holes in hers, you know. I mean, it's just absolutely insane. We dated for 2 weeks, and they nicknamed us Hatchet and Hammer. It was just absolutely insane. And, you know, I was with that newcomer Al-Anon last night, and she said, I think I was in love. It hurt. And that's it. You know, I mean, that's how I judged it. You know, I mean, we used to beat the hell out of each other and call it foreplay. You know. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy, and I just loved it. It was just exciting. It was just absolutely exciting all the time. It was such an explosive situation. It was like a combat zone all the time, and people wanted us to, finally it got so bad that people wanted us to get away, and so we took off and went off, you know, typical geographic type of thing. You know, most of the time my when I moved, it wasn't a geographic, it was on an unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. It was time to go, man, let's leave. And we'd load up and go, and we did 3 or 4 geographics along the way while she got pregnant. I don't remember saying I wanted to do that. I probably was crossing over the invisible line when that happened. And but anyway, I accumulate things like typical alcoholic. I accumulate this and that and the other, and I woke up one morning, come out of a blackout, and I had a wife and a kid and a dog and a cat, and I was in trouble, so I said, we better move. So we moved again, and we went to California. I went to California because a guy named Lion Shorty offered me a job on a ranch 40 miles west of Long Beach, California. And I didn't have sense enough to know that was ocean, 40 miles west of Long Beach, but that don't make no difference, man. Where there's dope, there's hope. So away we went, and went off down the road. And when we got there we were, because there where I went, I took me, and I'm the first one to get there. And I looked for the deals. I found a hell of a deal. I found a house, lived right next door to a bunch of hippies. I'd never seen any hippies before like that down in Texas. But these guys were dropping that LSD and stuff, laying around the front yard naked, watching the sun come up and go down, going blind. Weirdest bunch I ever seen, and a motorcycle gang lived on the other side of me, I understood all that kind of stuff because that's where the deal was, I'd promised them it's going to be different, but I went right exactly where it was, only worse usually. And I moved them right in there, and then I took off because I had to go find out where the action was. And I'd come home, and there she'd be. It's like when I got home, it's like her mouth was attached to the doorknob, She always wanted to talk to me about where I'd been, and she always knew more about where I'd been than me. And I don't like talking to anybody that knows more about where I've been than me in the first place. And then we'd have to have these meaningful conversations. Then she'd go crazy, and I'd have to stick my gun right on the end of her nose and get her to shut up. One time I hit her right upside the head and popped a cap 44 mag right next to her ear. She couldn't hear nothing, but she kept talking. I mean, you can't scare a sick woman. You can't. You can't. They're crazy. And, I'd get so loaded I'd pass out. I passed out one time. She stabbed me all over my back. I came to and said, God, what's wrong with my back? She said, oh, let me see. You broke out of acne of the back. Poured alcohol, drubbing alcohol all over my back. And I'm going to tell you what, them Baptists dipped me and sprinkled me, but that alcohol bath got me closer to Jesus than anything I ever had. I found myself talking to a judge, and the judge was talking to me about me, and he had the right guy. And he was talking to me about doing 3 to 5 for something I couldn't remember. So somewhere along the conversation with my parole officer and what have you, I discussed the possibility of me going to Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, I'd never been to Alcoholics Anonymous before, and I didn't know anything about it, didn't have anything to fear. If you don't have anything to fear, there's nothing to be concerned about. But I had something to fear about going back to jail for 3 to 5, so I made a deal with them. I said, I'll go to Alcoholics Anonymous. And they gave me a court card, set me up with a parole officer, and set me up with some meetings, and introduced me to a person to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I went home and laid down on the couch, and pretty soon my wife had been to see a lawyer, and the lawyer discussed the possibility of me going to Alcoholics Anonymous. And unbeknownst to me, she come home, and by then she's carrying this 12-inch butcher knife around, and she come home and got her butcher knife right in my face and said, I think you need to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. I wanted her to think it's her idea. So I said, sure, yeah, right, I'm supposed to go to Alcoholics Anonymous, yeah. I didn't tell her my parole officer thought it was a good idea, too. I said, I figured to come to this, and I'll call Alcoholics Anonymous, we'll find a meeting. So I called this number they'd given me, and they found a meeting around the corner, and I told her, I said, there's a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous over here in the church. Starts at 8:30, it's over at 10. On about 8 o'clock, she come over with that butcher knife stuck in my face, said, get up. I had some reference points there, so I got up, got in the old car, and away we went over to the church, pulled up in front of the church, had a big AA sign out in front of the church. I cased the joint right away, one door in, one door out. I knew I was trapped. She looked at me right now. I said, what time's that meeting over? I said, it's over at 10. She looked at me right now and said, I'm going to tell you something, Ace. If your ass comes out of that door before 10, I'm going to gut you. Now, you can keep me in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. You got a crazy woman circling the perimeter with a 12-inch butcher knife. I won't go nowhere. I'll stay in the room. I won't learn nothing, but I'll stay in the room. And I sat down in that meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, went to one meeting a week for 4 months. Didn't drink, didn't use, didn't do nothing. Didn't get the sponsor, didn't get the steps, didn't do nothing. I was in BB. B&B, that's the best place to be if you ain't an alcoholic. I mean, really an alcoholic. I mean, if you're a little bit alcoholic, that's all right. And if she says you're an alcoholic, that's all right. And they can say you're an alcoholic, that's all right. But if you ain't really an alcoholic, you're not really an alcoholic, so you don't need to do all that other stuff. I knew that. So I said I was just on the verge of solving my problem. I'd gone next door and talked to them hippies next door. I told them, I said, when I drink that firewater, I go crazy. And they said, oh, you should smoke some tie sticks. I said, well, what do you do when you smoke tie sticks? They said, oh, we hang around the park and wait for the ice cream truck to come by. I never wanted to hang around the park and wait for no ice cream truck. I might wanted to rob the ice cream truck, but I didn't want to wait on no ice cream truck, but I had a reservation, see? Had a reservation. And so I sat in that one meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous for one meeting a week for 4 months. Went home, laid down, waited. Got up next week, went back to the meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. Worst time of my entire life. She said it's the best time we'd had in years. Finally, built a little trust there, you know, and beat the deal down at the courthouse. She let me go to that meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous by myself, and an amazing thing happened to me. I was still in B&B, and I got struck drunk immediately. I mean, struck drunk immediately, and my life changed. It never gets better. It always gets worse. And there isn't nothing worse than being out there with a belly full of booze and a head full of AA. Just drives you crazy. You know you're a loser then. I mean, you know they're right. You know what they said was right. You know they're over there in their A&A thing. And you know she's right, and they're right, and they're all right, and you're wrong. And wrong is wrong. And I sunk to the bottom there so very fast. In the next 4 years of my life, I was in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous, more out than in. And my life was just absolutely, unbelievably insane. And, you know, I know it's a progressive disease, and I share with you what it used to be like, what happened, and what it's like today in a general way, and thank God it's in a general way. But I share with you that what happened, because it's very important for me to remember this, because I'm a physically violent kind of an alcoholic. If I were to take a drink right now, pick up a drink, I would not be a funny drunk sitting on a bar stool telling funny jokes. That ain't where I come from. I know today because of this program the animal's in the cage, but the door's not locked, and I share with you where I come from in a general way. And the violence in that home and the insanity in that home got worse. I know what it's like to stand in my kitchen, look down a hallway, a little 9-year-old girl standing down at the end of the hallway. I take a drink off a bottle of vodka, and I look at her, and she looks at me. She didn't run down there and grab me around the leg and say, Daddy, come play with me. She looked at me, and I looked at her, and I turned around, and I took a drink. I took a drink because I had to take a drink. And when I looked back down that hallway, she's gone. The only thing she wanted to know is which direction I was going so she'd go the other way. I share with you what it's like crawling out of the back of that house early in the morning. Gotta have a drink. Physically, I gotta have a drink. I beg of you, if you say you're an alcoholic, if you come out of that insanity of alcoholism, when you listen to people talking about this being a thinking problem around here, I beg of you to be able to reflect back on one point in your life or more. That is that point when physically, I'm talking about the phenomena of craving. The phenomena of craving, where I had to have a drink. I had to have a drink to function. I had to have the alcohol in me to function. The phenomena of craving was a driving motor that run my life beyond any other motivation. And I crawled out of the back of that house early in the afternoon maybe, and I'd come down a hallway where the only money in that house was in my daughter's piggy bank, and I'd crawl in her bedroom, reach underneath her bed. I'm talking about a big-time spender like me, a big-time Charlie. The only money in that house was in my daughter's piggy bank. I'd drag it out from underneath that bed, break it. And the alcoholic ego's an unbelievable thing. Unbelievable. Stealing my own kids' money, I separate the pennies, nickels, dimes, and the quarters, because I ain't going to be taking no pennies down to the liquor store or the Connections house. I'm going to be showing silver all the way when I go. And I don't know about you, but when I'm doing those kind of things, I got eyes in the back of my head. And looking out of the back of my head, I see my daughter hiding in the closet, a little 10-year-old girl hiding in the closet behind me. She didn't go to school that day because she had a black eye and a busted lip. I'm pretty sure I had something to do with that. But being the very best father I could be, needing a drink, got to have a drink. Physically, I got to have a drink. I give that kid a break. Can you imagine that? I let that kid shoot behind me without inflicting any more pain in their life. Because you see, at that point in my life, if you catch me at that pitiful, incomprehensible, demoralizing situation, it's absolutely necessary for me to inflict some kind of a painful memory in your life that overshadows what you saw me doing. You can bet on it. But being the very best father that day, I give that kid a break. I let her shoot out behind me without inflicting any more pain in their life. Because I didn't have time. I had to hit that money so I could get that drink. And I share with you what it's like to stand in the bathroom and I'm doing what I got to do. My kind of an alcoholic, I reach for the other things. I'm grateful for the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. When it describes a real alcoholic, it talks about a moderate drinker, heavy drinker, and a real alcoholic. It talks about a real Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It talks about insanely drunk most of the time. It also talks about the fact that a real alcoholic will reach for other things. They'll reach for other things to calm their nerves. And in that place in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, in the midst of that phenomena of craving, he talks about the possibility that a real alcoholic will reach for narcotics. And standing in my bathroom, being the very best father I could be, sucking on a bottle of peppermint schnapps, I reach over and I get my outfit, cook up some stuff, put it in a point, turn around, tie my arm off, and I'm getting ready to stick that needle in my arm. And I look in a mirror just that quick, and I see a reflection of a little 10-year-old girl looking through the hole in the door in that bathroom where I probably stuck my foot. And just for a second, my eyes caught hers. She didn't say, "Daddy, what are you doing? Come play with me." She just looked at me and I looked at me, and I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt this deal's got me. I don't have it. I no longer have control of what's going on in my life. I no longer have a choice. And I turned around and I did what I had to do because physically I couldn't go any longer without it. I'm talking about a phenomenon of craving that drove me beyond any kind of conscience, beyond any kind of awareness, beyond any kind of shame. People talk about shame. There's a great place you can go and live beyond shame. There's a lifestyle of insanity where there is no conscience, where there is no right, where there is no wrong, and you can go there and you can live there for a long, long time. And I lived that way not a day or a week or a month. I lived that way for 4 years. 4 years, and the people around me lived that way because they didn't know they had a choice. And I share with you that insanity and where it takes me. That insanity takes me to the point where I have no choices, where I have no answers, where I have no faith, where I have no hope. It's called a bottom. It's called a bottom. Now, in the 12 and 12, in the next to last paragraph, the first step, it says an alcoholic must hit a bottom. I'm talking about a bottom, a very simple bottom. Not geographic bottom. I'm talking about a bottom where you're willing to do what's required of you in the next 11 steps immediately, the best of your ability, a surrender. Now, I've been in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous many times, but I tell you this, coming out of my last drunk, the insanity of that last drunk, and coming back into my home, and the insanity in that home, I'm grateful to people in Alcoholics Anonymous. Little gray-headed man made a 12-step call on me, Little Jack. I call Little Jack every Tuesday night. He's still alive, still sober. God, I'm grateful for Little Jack. He came to my house and did a 12-step call on me, just like the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous says. He'd seen me before, and he came in there and he wasn't intimidated by me, and he took me by the ear and led me into a detox, and I'm grateful for Little Jack. Call him every Tuesday, and Little Jack always tells me to tell you something. There, he said, "Where are you going last Tuesday?" I said, "I'm going to Rhode Island." He said, "You be sure and tell those people in Rhode Island you wouldn't have a damn thing to say if it weren't for me." And he took me and put me in a detox. Put me in a detox with 38 other people. I'm grateful for detoxes. I'm not going to be one of these people who stands up here and puts down hospitals and detoxes. I'll tell you, I couldn't have made it if it hadn't been for a detox. Another cup of coffee and a donut wouldn't have worked. They had to lock me up. They locked me up in a detox, lasted a month or more, with 38 other people. I stayed in there, and they brought people from what they call hospital and institution. I'm grateful for H&I work because there's people goes into hospitals and institutions and brings the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. And they brought the message of Alcoholics Anonymous to me. They brought me the tools that I stand on today. They bring me the very foundation. And they weren't nice to me. They weren't intimidated by me. They were not nice to me. And I sat in there and went to meetings and read the book and did all the stuff. I was crazy. When I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous says waves of the past will roll over us. I had me some big waves fall on me. When I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I owed over $250,000 to people that you can't write them a letter and say, I'll send you $100 a month. I'd killed 2 people in my way of life, and I had some amends to dead people. I had 2 different groups of people that had a contract on my life. So I was comfortable in that detox. I sat in there, I felt safe. I felt safe. Because I knew they weren't going to come in there and get me. They was afraid they'd get infected with whatever it was we had. So I sat in that detox, and they brought some people in there. They brought a guy in there. His name was Rotten Ron. Rotten Ron was in the H&I, and he came in there, and he come up to me, and he said he drew straws, and he was my sponsor. I said, what's a sponsor, a friend? And he said, no, if you want a friend, get a dog. So I got a dog. I got a 120-pound German Shepherd dog that hates me, attacks me every time I get around. I don't need a dog. He said, I'm your sponsor, and I hate you. I said, well, I ain't real favor with you either. Matter of fact, if I get out of here and catch you in the parking lot, I'll run right over you. He came in there to see me. He said, we're going to work the steps. He sat down with me and told me that I was an alcoholic. That was kind of a relief, because I didn't know what it was. I didn't know if I was walking or riding a bicycle, to tell you the truth. I was so crazy when I got in there, I couldn't understand what was going on or where it was coming from or what was which or what. You know, they told me that there was a God. I said, no, I'm an atheist. You know, they went and got a dictionary and looked up the definition of an atheist, and I didn't even understand it. They said, you're running around saying you're something you don't even understand. Said, there's only one thing that I needed to know about God, very simply. There is one, and I'm not him. And they made it very simple. And they said that I had to understand that I was crazy. That's the reason we had the second step. Did you believe you can be restored to sanity? And I said, no, I can't be restored to something I never had. Any more you can come back from someplace you've never been. He said, oh, you can be restored. You can be restored if you make a decision to believe in the power greater than yourself. And I said, I don't understand what you're talking about. And they said, good. If you don't understand it, you might be able to get it. They said, now you're going to have to work a 4th step. I said, what's that? And they said, you're going to have to tell somebody everything there ever was to know about you. I said, my lawyers told me don't ever tell anybody or they could lock me up forever. They said, we understand you did a lot of amphetamines. I said, yeah, I did a lot of speed. They said, then you've told your 5th step at least a dozen times anytime anybody sat down with you. Anybody did speed did their 5th step, so ain't no problem. Said, what we're going to point out to you is the exact nature of your wrongs, and you're going to get to see them. And you got character defects. And I said, yeah, my grandpappy told me that. He said, I had character defects. You didn't have character, you didn't have nothing. They said, you're going to have to make amends. I said, wait a minute. Anybody had anything to do with me had to be a little bit wrong. I don't care if I'm 99% wrong and you're 1% wrong. Wrong is wrong. Why do I got to make amends? And they said, because you need to know how to do that. You need to know what it's like to feel the other side of the deal. And I didn't understand what they said. And then they said, you're going to have to look at it every day in that 10th step. I said, I did thousands of dollars worth of drugs and alcohol to keep from looking at me every day. Why do I want to look at me every day? I said, because you need to look at you every day. And then they said, we're going to pray and meditate. I said, well, when I pray, nothing happens. When I meditate, I slip into a sexual fantasy. So what the hell? And they said, don't worry about it. It'll happen. And when it happens over here, then you'll give it away. So what am I going to give away? I don't have nothing to give away. And they said, we don't care what you give away. You'll just know that you'll give it away. And for an alcoholic to give something away, that's spiritual. Because alcoholics are selfish and they never want to give anything away. And I said, I don't understand what the hell you're talking about. And they said, that's good. You might make it. I stayed in that detox for a little over a month, and they put 39 of us in a circle. And if you're new or relatively new, you're hanging around here, I'm going to give you a very valuable piece of information I learned that day. I learned that this ain't a popularity contest, and don't pay no attention to the vote, because they put 39 of us in a circle. And God has a funny sense of humor. Started on my left. And they went around that room, and everybody got to take each other's inventory. And everybody in that room, all 38 of them, said that I was going to drink when I got out. I don't know why. Might have been because I said, I'm going to drink when I get out of here. I wanted to drink. I didn't know how to not drink. I wanted to drink. I'd been drinking for 22 years, except when I was locked up in that 4 months, I went to AA. I wanted to drink all the time. So when I was in there, I said, I'm going to drink. I'm going to drink. I know I'm going to drink. I need a drink, got a drink, can't think about nothing but drinking. So 38 of them said, I'm going to drink. You know what that did? They gave me my first AA resentment. I'm living proof you can stay sober at least a year and a half on a resentment. Because when it got to me, I said, I ain't going to drink. I'll see you all in hell. I'm the only one out of 39 that's still sober. Only one. There's 11 dead, 7 suicide. Sobriety just so damn bad, couldn't handle it. So don't pay attention to the vote. Don't pay any attention to the popularity contest, because I've outlived most of my critics, you know. And I just hung in. They got me and took me home. I went up and knocked on the front door. She come to the front door, and I said, I'm going to go to Alcoholics Anonymous every day for the rest of my life. What are you going to do? She said, oh, I'm going to Al-Anon. The kid's going to Al-Teen. The dog's going to Al-Dog. And the cat's going to Al-Cat. What are you going to do, dummy? I didn't know what to say. I went in and called my sponsor. He told me not to say nothing. Don't talk to her. I went in and sat down. Pretty soon my sponsor come and got me, and he started taking me to meetings. I went to men's stags all the time because they talked my native tongue, profanity. And they took me over to men's stags, and I was sitting in these men's stags, and I had a lot of problems. And I didn't quit carrying a gun because I had some reason to be paranoid, and they took me to meetings where it's okay to carry a gun. Matter of fact, if you didn't have one, when you went in the door, they gave you one. I'd sit in that meeting, and everybody'd talk about all that sick stuff. I'd take my gun out of my boot, take a bullet out of my gun, and I'd take a Pentel pen, and I'd hold that bullet up, and I'd write your name when you're sharing on that bullet, and I hold it up and say, I'm going to kill you right after the meeting. Put you out of your misery. You need to die. They just keep talking. You know how alcoholics are. They don't pay no attention to anything. And after the meetings, at the end of the meeting, why, you know, they'd stand up and put their arm around each other and pray, and I'd forget which one I was going to kill. So I'd think, well, I'll come back next week and throw a grenade in here. They're all sick. They'd take me home. I'd sit at home. I didn't know what to do. I owed all this money. I had all these problems. I didn't know what the hell was going on. I didn't trying to figure what out and wherever out. And I just go to meetings all the time, and you know, I had to try to run the deal, get the money paid back. I went down to Texas and borrowed a bunch of money from a guy that hated me. Some of those resentments are good. You know, in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous says when we go to try to make those amends, some of our enemies will welcome us. But I went to a banker down there. I said, I need $250,000. Now, I grew up with this kid. When he's a little kid down at the park, I jerked his pants down in front of the girls one day. He never forgot that. He owned the whole county back there, and I couldn't get nobody to loan me this money, and I figured, well, maybe he will. So I'm sober a little while. I go down to see him, and I said, I need about $250,000. He said, you remember that day you pulled my pants down in front of the girls? I said, yeah. He said, I've never forgot that. He said, I'm going to loan you that money. I'm going to loan you that money. He said, but if you miss one payment, I'm going to kill you. And that's the only place I can get the money, so I figured I'm dead if I don't get it, dead if I miss it, so give me the money. So he gave me that money. I'll tell you what, funny thing about me, I walked out of that deal with a checkbook, and I thought, I wonder if I could go to Borneo and drink near beer. You know, I went and got that checkbook, paid my debts, and took off, man, and started just running as hard as I could. Sue's going to Al-Anon, and we made the kid go to Al-Teen. She hated us. She said, comes back from the Al-Teen meeting, she said, all they talk about in that Al-Teen stuff, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I said, hell, that's just like home, you know. Just keep going. And I just kept going. I couldn't understand what was going on. When I came there, you know, I didn't have much going for me. I'd been hiding out. Had a long beard, long hair, didn't wear no underwear, no socks, you know, just pretty much running lean. My sponsor captured me and took me down to this place, this clothing store, and he got me one of them suits and fixed me all, outfitted me up. He got me some of them underwear, you know, different color underwear and some different color socks. You know, he said you wear underwear 3 days, turn them inside out, wear them 3 days, do the laundry on the 7th, and you know, somebody had to explain that to me. I didn't understand that. I was traveling light, and they took me down to the old Olano Club and made me a secretary of a Sunday meeting, you know, and got me in there on Sunday. I didn't know what to do, man. Cleaned me up, got me a haircut, trimmed me up a little bit, you know. And, you know, I was trying to make the deal work, and they got me an old car, went down there and bought me a big Mark IV Lincoln, you know, had one of them big long hoods. I'd park it right out in front of the meeting hall so the newcomers would have hope, you know. get my suit on, my little hanky on, and everything. I'd go in there and stand and radiate hate. I didn't know what the hell to do. I was radiate hate. Nobody'd come up and say, I want what you got, you know. I'd worked all the steps. You know, there ain't nothing worse than having it and not knowing what to do with it. So I'd just stand around in there crazy, you know, and I'd stand there. As a matter of fact, there was a guy that was sober. He was on the bomb squad, the L.A. bomb squad, and his name was Bob the cop. And Bob come up to me one day and he said, you know, you're probably as well as you're ever going to be. I said, I hate you, Bob. He said, I love you, Keith, and he gave me a grenade. The closest thing to serenity you'll ever know is if you put this in your mouth and pull the pin. So I savored that grenade, and I would stand around the old Anti-Milano Club with my grenade in my hand at my meeting and radiate hate and say, we love you, come on in. And I was standing there radiating hate, but I was ready. I had no clue what the hell was going on. And I'd done everything, and I was almost dying. There's nothing worse than being sober. I was so dry as a fire hazard, is what I was. And I was standing there one day, and I looked around, and the weirdo standing next to me, the weirdest looking guy you ever seen in your entire life. Man, had hair sticking out everywhere. He wasn't short enough to be a midget or tall enough to be a man. Just weird. Had hair sticking out, funny little cap over here. Welder's cap pulled down over one ear with strawberries and cherries on it. He had a pair of shorts on, and he painted his feet black with shoe polish, so it looked like he had socks on. He beat the laundry deal. I said, why don't you comb your hair? He said, I did. I said, hell you did. Don't look like you did to me. I said, what do you want? And he said, will you be my sponsor? And I go, oh, Jesus, I can't even take care of myself. I said, here, hold my grenade, you know. Got to give him something to do. I went across the room to my sponsor. He's standing over on the other side of the room. He wouldn't even stand next to me, you know. He'd grab newcomers over there and bring them. I asked one newcomer, I said, what did my sponsor say about me? He said, that newcomer told me, he said, your sponsor told me if I go back out and drink, I may end up like you. Sometimes the best you can be is just a good, bad example. And I went over to my sponsor. I said, see that weirdo over there? He said, yeah. I said, well, he just asked me to be his sponsor. And my sponsor said, yeah, I know, I sent him over there. So you go back over there and tell him you'll do exactly what he says. Now, that don't make sense to me today, but I knew sponsors don't ever make any sense, and I knew better than to question them, because if you question the sponsor, they go crazy on you. I didn't want him to embarrass himself, so I said, all right, and I went back over and I said, give me my grenade. I said, my sponsor says I got to be your sponsor. What do you want to do? And he says, oh, I want to go for riding your Lincoln. And so I said, okay, well, you go out that door, I'll go out this door, I'll meet you out there at the Lincoln. He said, no, I want to go with you. He grabbed me around the arm, and away we went. Got over by the door, started out the door of that old clubhouse, and two guys I knew leaning up against the door jamb. This guy said, that's my sponsor. I said, don't tell people I'm your sponsor, for God's sakes. I don't want nobody to know that. Them guys looked at us and said, boy, it's going to be fun to watch you two grow. I got that dude in that leg, and away he went. He started talking sick stuff to me, man. I mean, sick stuff. And he'd say, you ever do anything like that? And I'd say, yeah, I did some stuff like that. I'd start telling him some of my sick stuff, and he'd say, boy, you're sick. We need to go to a meeting. So we're going to a meeting. I'd take him to a meeting, sit in the front row, let him listen to some great spiritual giant, you know. Then that's why they have speaker meetings, so you can bring your newcomers, and they can sit up in the front row, and then you explain to them later what it was that the speaker said. I knew that. I'd get him my Lincoln, and I'd start explaining to him what it was that the speaker said, talk to him about God, and he said, we need a miracle. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I read the Bible, and they had the parting of the water and the burning bush. We need a miracle. And I was thinking, well, if I had some lighter fluid, I could torch the hedge over here. All I had was a .45 automatic in the glove box, so I just reached in the glove box, got that old .45 out, run around the chamber, stuck it upside his head, and said, I'll tell you what, Ace, I'll count to 10. You pray. If I don't decide to pop a cap on your ass because of a floating resentment, you've just done step 3. I counted 10 real slow. He jumped out of that car, ran right back in that meeting hall where my sponsor was, showed him that ring on the side of his forehead where I put the barrel of that .45, and rat-finked on me, told my sponsor I put a .45 to the side of his head and made him do step 3. My sponsor said, yeah, I know, ain't he spiritual? He's crazy. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but by God, we're both still sober, so don't knock it. Some are sicker than others, and depending upon how far down on the scale you are, you need some special help on occasion. I moved out of the old neighborhood and got me a new house, and one morning I was over there doing a little meditation, come and knock at the front door, went to the front door, and here he was. Standing at my front door, looked like one foot was hung in the concrete and the other foot was headed for Tijuana. Had a big book in his hand and a bunch of paper. I said, "What do you want?" And he said, "I want to work the steps like you did." I'm trying to remember how I worked them, and I wanted to get him in there quick before the neighbors seen him. So I got him, "Come on in." I said, "The first step says I'm powerless. I'm pretty sure of that because you're in my house. My life's unmanageable. I'm sure of that because you're here. Looks like you're going to be here for a while. You're crazy and I'm crazy, and I know that because we understand each other, so we must be on step 3. He said, "You're not going to put that gun inside of my head again, are you?" I said, "No, we're going to get on our knees." We went in the kitchen, got on our knees, put that book down there. I said, "We're going to read the 3rd step prayer together." He cuddled up underneath my arm. We started to read that 3rd step prayer. I had that tingling sensation and questioned my sexuality. But we went ahead and prayed. Cat walked by and looked at us weird. I figured, man, if my wife comes down and sees me on my knees praying with this guy, she's going to know I've whacked out for sure. He jumped up and said, "Now I want to do my 4th step." And he throwed a bunch of paper in front of me. It was a blank paper and a pen. And I said, "Well, you're supposed to have that done when you get to your sponsor's house." And he said, "No, I can't write." He said, "I'll tell you what, I'll talk, you write." He started talking, and I started writing. I'm writing away, you know, and then he'd say, "You ever do anything like that?" And I said, "Yeah, I did some stuff like that." And I started telling him some of my stuff. Matter of fact, they say more will be revealed. And I was telling him some of my stuff, and I happened to think of some things that I'd forgot to tell anybody. Never was going to tell anybody. Just happened to come up. I knew that God was in the room, and he couldn't read, so I just put some of my stuff in his. God don't care how you get it out, baby. That's what it's all about. That cat packed out a load for me that day, I'll guarantee you. We burnt that one. And pretty soon he ran around there and kissed me on the cheek and said, "I love you." I thought, well, that's it. Divorce her and follow him, for God's sake. And everybody's hugging around here. I don't understand what's going on. But I know something. I know something happened that day that I'd never had it, happen before, ever before in my entire life. It's the first time in my entire life that I ever gave anybody else, total and complete freedom in my life. I became transparent sitting there that day, and I know today that transparency is the first act of love. I let that guy see in, and he let me see in, and we became transparent. We have no secrets. As a result of that full circle, you see, when I did my 5th step with my sponsor, it made half circle. When you do it with another alcoholic, it makes full circle, and you got to make full circle before you get it. You got to make full circle, and love is transparency, love is patience. Sit there and listen to that guy's sick stuff and not hate him or resent him or one-up him. That day I sit there with that guy, and I loved him more for having the guts to be able to tell me the things that he told me. And I loved him more because he had the freedom. And I sit there that day, and I became transparent with another human being. I didn't wonder what time it was or how long it had taken, and it took some period of time. And I knew that day beyond a shadow of a doubt that I cared for that person, and I had more hope and I had more freedom. You see, there was no secrets when I left that room that day, and I know today that I'm as sober as I am secret. If you have no secrets, there is no gossip. People talk about gossip around here. There is no gossip if you got no secrets. You see, there's nothing going on in my life today that I have nothing to hide. And I learned that day I became transparent. And I allowed God to come into my life unbeknownst to me and shine His light in some dark places in my life, but I knew something beyond a shadow of a doubt. I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that those were the things that are going to set me free. And it is in forgiving that we are forgiven. And up to including that period of my life, I had sat around here in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'd sit here and I'd say, I know it's working for you, but it's never going to work for me. I know that. I know who I am, where I came from. I know the way I acted. I'll never be able to make those amends. And I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that I've been able to make those amends, and some of those amends have been difficult because it's much easier to say I'm sorry rather than it is to say I'm wrong. God, I didn't want to say I'm wrong because, you see, if I say I'm wrong, I got to change, and I'm afraid of change. You see, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm going to be. I don't know where I'm going. And yet that change, every good thing in my life is preceded by that wall of fear. And when I would go through those walls of fear, nothing but good would come out of my life. There's a lot of things that had to change, things I knew in the very beginning. There's some basic changes. I had some absolutes when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous on May the 11th, 1976. And the 4 years prior to that, I hadn't done them. Now, I don't know about your kind of an alcoholic, but my kind of an alcoholic, there's certain things that I know beyond a shadow of a doubt as a result of the inventories I've done that will get me drunk. I know something standing here this afternoon. That lady sitting right there, we've been together 35 years. We've been together over 18 and a half years in this program. I ain't cheated on her in over 18 and a half years. I've been faithful to her, and she's been faithful to me. You see, now that puts something in a relationship that I knew nothing about. It's called trust. Trust. You see, and when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I was not trustworthy. And the curse of a thief is that he can't trust himself. You see, and through the actions that I've taken in my relationships, it's put trust in that relationship. And when I learned how to trust another human being through the actions, the right actions, I have never hit that lady since I sobered up May the 11th, 1976, nor my daughter. The violence had to stop. The physical violence, I had to have abstinence from that. Abstinence from the unfaithfulness, abstinence from the physical violence. And from that I built a foundation with the abstinence from the alcohol and the narcotics. Absolutely. Absolutely. I've never forgotten the fact that the phenomena of cravings in my life, the motor's running, baby, it's just not in gear. And I share with you about the narcotics because it's a very important part of my life. It's a very important part of Alcoholics Anonymous. There's a lot of people, well-meaning people, wandering around Alcoholics Anonymous saying we don't talk about the narcotics. But I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to tell you something very important that comes out of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It tells you in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous it's absolutely impossible to say, thy will be done, if you have any of that in you. If you have any of that in you, it's impossible to say, thy will be done. So you cannot move in those steps if you have any kind of narcotics or mind-altering chemicals. And I know today, because of the abstinence that I've had to believe in and apply in my life, I've been able to reap the benefits. And I've been able to have the promises. You know, the greatest freedom of the promises, the first night in steps, is the fear of people has left me. The fear of people has left me. I've been able to make those financial amends. And I had to understand if I owed $1, I got to pay $1 plus interest. And I had to pay all that money back. I didn't like that. I don't mind making a payment on new Mercedes that I bought in the blackout, but I don't like making a payment on something I ain't got. But I wanted the freedom. I wanted the freedom of that. I wanted the freedom of bondage to self. I wanted it beyond anything that I could imagine in my life, and I was willing to go the full length. It took me 12 years to make the financial amends that I made. And along that way in that financial amends, there's some things that I did that I recognized that I was going to have to make amends for the way I was making amends, and that's an ongoing thing. But I was able to pay that money back, and I was able to still provide for my family. In over 18 years, I've not written a hot check, and when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I had 4 bank accounts floating checks all over town, and I haven't done that. I had to change. I had to change those things. Another thing that I found that I had to do, I had no discipline in the work area. I had to get a job. Oh, man, I hated to get a job. I mean a job. Go to work. I was standing in my garage, and there was a newcomer guy standing there, and I said, I'm going to have to go get a job. He said, oh, man, Spons, don't do that. Don't get a job, man. I said, yeah, I'm going to have to go get a job. He said, why are you going to have to go get a job? I said, because I told you to go get a job, and now it's my turn to go get a job. I need a job, and I went and got a job. And an amazing thing, it put the discipline in my life that I never had before. To have a boss, to have a job. I got a job where I go clock in, clock out. I have a workstation. Don't steal nothing. No pencils, no paper, no time. You see? And I had to put that discipline in my life. As a result of that, well, my life got simple. Very, very simple. And I live a very simple life. I've had to be involved in service. I had to be involved, take the action to be involved in service. Because service is gratitude in action. And I have to be involved in the service. I'm very fortunate. Sue and I are very fortunate. We work with a lot of young people. Sponsor a lot of young people. Young. Come off the streets, L.A. 16, 17 years old, been out there selling their ass for 3 or 4 years, narcotics, alcohol. We work with them. Sue sponsors a lot of young girls. I love the young people in this program. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. And one of the greatest gifts you can give Alcoholics Anonymous is give them the young people and teach them what Alcoholics Anonymous is. If you want to keep this thing going, we have an obligation to teach the young people what it is and what it is not. And we are very blessed. We have a lot of young people around us, sick ones. I mean, the kind of young people their parents don't even want them. Their mama threw them away. And them young people give us life. They give us life. They make me feel young. They're excited. I love to watch them come in, and they get clean and sober, and then they fall in love, get married, get a divorce, go through the pain. I tell them, I had to go through that. Why shouldn't you? You know? But we're there for them. We're there for them. Not too long ago, Sue and I celebrated our anniversary, our wedding anniversary. We had a 30-year wedding anniversary, and all these young people got around. And when we had our 25th wedding anniversary, they came to our home and they stood in our living room, over 100 of them, young people, young couples, with hope. And I stood there and, I look at them and I think, what have I got to share? What can I possibly share with these people? What can I say? And yet, I look back on those times and I'm looking at them, we are, what we do speaks so loud you can't hear a word that I say. And I remember standing in there, as we have many times, and these young couples looking at us, and Sue and I standing there, and they wanted what we had. They wanted to have that love, that faithfulness, that togetherness, and not that clinging of, apartness, but that togetherness, that we complement each other. Sue and I don't lean on each other. We're two individuals because of this program that allows us to walk out there on the street and hold our head up as examples. And many of the young people in our lives have been able to come to the program and get the hope and get the trust and get the faith that it needs to go on with their lives and accomplish something. There's my young group of guys, there's about 15 young men that are sober they'll have 15 years in the next year or so, that sobered up 16, 17 years old. Street kids. And they're out there working. They're able to go get a job, and many of them are in middle management and have good jobs and make good money, and are good members of their community and good members of their AA fellowship and are good members of their group. I mean, those are the important things for me. These things where we come out here and share, I come out here to share with you the experience, the strength, and the hope of what's happening in my life. There's so few people that come here that the families have been put back together. My daughter is a miracle story in herself because she hated me and her mother beyond anything you can imagine. And by forcing her to go to Alateen, she was able to develop a higher power in her life and a program way of life, and she was able to fulfill a dream. All her life she had a dream, and children they have their dreams. We all have our dreams. One of the most important things about sobriety is to be able to see something and want to do something and then make a commitment to it and then do it. And I'm grateful that this program gives us a one-day-at-a-time way to do that. And my daughter wanted to be a model. She used to cut out pictures, and when I sobered up, my daughter had her hair in her face and her chin on her chest. She was just a beat-down little child. She's like a wounded animal in the back of that house. And because she went to Alateen, the kids in Alateen encouraged her to fulfill that dream. She wanted to be a model, and the kids in Alateen encouraged her because they taught her and they told her, the higher power wants good things for you in your life. Does not want bad things. This is a negative disease, and you can come out of that and get the things that you always wanted. And our daughter went when she was 14 years old, 13 or 14 years old. She went down to a department store and paid $16 and took a modeling course. I'm going to meetings with Alcoholics Anonymous. Her mother's going to Al-Anon, and we didn't know really what was going on. She did it on her own. She had the strength to do it on her own because of the kids in Alateen encouraged her to do this. Why she took it, and one day she came up and handed me a piece of paper and said, "What are you doing next Saturday, Dad?" And I didn't know. I said, "Well, I'll probably go to a meeting." She said, "Well, how about coming over at this address?" And I walked into her room that Saturday morning about 10 o'clock, bigger than this, and I looked up on the stage, a bunch of little kids on the stage. So I went to the back of the room, leaned up against the wall, had my cowboy hat on, my shades. I was cool, terminally cool. I didn't want nobody to notice me, but nobody in there knew me, And I leaned up against the wall, and pretty soon all these kids start coming out and modeling and doing their little thing. And I look, pretty soon I look, my daughter come out on that stage. She walked down on the front of that stage, and she had a sparkle in her eye. She had a smile on her face. It was much different. The hair was out of her face, and she seen me leaning against the wall back there, and she gave me the high sign. And I wanted to scream to those people in that room, if you only knew the hell that kid come out of, you'd stand up and give her an ovation. But you see, it stuck right here in my throat. I couldn't say anything because all I've been doing one day at a time is going to these stupid meetings. I've been going to these meetings, and I've been staying sober. And because of a loving God in her life and in my life, I stayed out of her way, and I didn't give her the negative thoughts that I used to. I encouraged her to do the thing that she wanted to do. And from that, she parlayed an unbelievable career. Our daughter Simone is 32 years old, and she's still a ramp model. That's almost unheard of. I mean, she works all the time and all the big shows and everything. And that isn't a success story. I don't tell you that to some kind of a success story. I tell you this, that just like Sue and I go to these meetings and do this, every Wednesday night my daughter gets on a train. She lives in Milan, Italy, and she rides a train 2.5 to 3 hours. Costs her $30 out of her own pocket. If she takes anybody she sponsors, she pays their way because she has a living that brings in the money to do it. She rides that train 2.5 to 3 hours to a NATO base where military people come and the wives and the families, and they have a meeting every Wednesday night. And that meeting lasts until everybody shares. So sometimes it goes 3 and 4 hours. And after that meeting's over, she pays $25 to $30 and rides that train back through a NATO base, comes out through the military, all them guys honking and yelling at her and all that deal, and gets on that train every Wednesday night and rides that back home. Now, a lot of people won't even go to a meeting if it's around the block. And 3 other nights a week, she started meetings over there. They've started potluck meetings and eating meetings and speaker meetings, and they got tapes and all kinds of stuff. She's been involved in the service. She's been involved with helping the AAs and the Al-Anons translate the Italian, the English literature into Italian, because the Italians talk with their hands and they miss a lot of words. And she's been able to do those things that gives her the freedom to fulfill the dream. You see, that's the whole point. You get out of this thing what you put into it. If you don't put anything into it, you don't get anything out of it. Our family is together because we made this a way of life. We put this program and this way of life before anything else. And because of that, our whole life has come together. We live in a beautiful home. We have many friends. We're welcome in our community. The cops ain't been to my house in a long time, I guarantee you. You see, and I walk out there on that street, and I hold my head up because I have no secrets. And I walk in the sunlight of the Spirit. And probably the greatest freedom of all is that, man, from the second I woke up this morning, right here, I went out and walked all over this town this afternoon. What a beautiful place. And not once did I come upon anybody and look down. I looked them right in the eye. Not once walking around this town did I ever think of anybody or want to be anybody but me. God, what a great freedom. That's what I look for in every pill, fix, or drink I ever took in my life, man. I look for something to turn me off, turn me on, take me someplace else. And the greatest freedom I got today is because I walked around here, and from the second I got up to this heartbeat right now, I haven't wanted to be anybody but me. Quiet heart. A quiet heart. I live in my head is something that I clear every day through pencil and paper. And I'll be able to pray and meditate. The reason I do that 10th step today is because I want the promises to keep being fulfilled in my life. It's not just some kind of a drill. And the reason I do my 11th step today is because I want the power that our God gives us to be able to fulfill the things that He wants us to do, and to be able to fulfill the dreams that I want to do. To be able to enjoy life. To be able to enjoy the family that I've been given. To enjoy the community. To enjoy the greatest gifts of all. To be with people who enjoy it, who can laugh and enjoy and have the enthusiasm about life. As I said in the very beginning, this is not about turning it off. This is about turning it on. Don't settle for the crackers and cheese. Pay attention to the people who are excited about this sobriety, the people who are living this thing, the people who are enjoying their sobriety. This is not about sitting around in some kind of a depression or hanging on to the past. This is about letting it go so that you can walk out there on the street and do the things that you always wanted to do. This is the freedom that we've been given to be able to enjoy those dreams and fulfill them, not huddled and cuddled in fear. Walk out of the darkness of the past and come on out here and enjoy life. Get out and play and do the things. Take a chance. You don't have a chance, you don't take a chance. The people that bring this thing to you, the people that show you the history of this program, bring to you the knowledge and the fact that you can live a life beyond your wildest drunken dreams. That you can live a way of life that has been given to you so freely that you might enjoy it yourself. So I beg of you, when you come in here, when we stand and say this prayer, we come together on weekends like this so that we can get the strength and the hope and the courage to go out there on those streets and do the things that we always wanted to do. To enjoy the things that we always wanted to be and part of and see, and to be a part of life and a part of a community and be a part of an understanding God that has given us the strength and the courage to do the things that He wants us to do, which is to have the love, the joy, and the peace, and the comfort that we always deserve. God bless and thank you.